Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Okay, it's time for another episode of Guess What We're Going to Talk About Today. This is my name is Lionel. This is you're listening. This is Drive Time Radio. It's May 30th. Is that the last Monday in May? Anybody?
May 30th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's not May 30th. It's May 28th. Today is
May 28th is a Monday.
May 28th is a Monday. Tom, as you're driving to work, you're listening to this.
Except I won't be driving to work on May 28th because it's Memorial Day.
So you will have watched one of the greatest Indy 500s in history yesterday. What a spectacular finish that was. Unbelievable. I couldn't believe what happened on the last lap. It was spectacular. Thoughts?
Yeah, and how about that Coca-Cola 600?
Yeah, and how about that Coca-Cola 600? And by now the Washington Capitals have unfortunately failed to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they are playing the Las Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah.
All right, and we have Bruce Kelly from Medford, Oregon, who is the superfan number one, creator of the Kelly Questions, and president of every model railroad club within 100 miles of Medford, Oregon, or Oregon. And we have Tom Jacobs, who is the president of the Reading Historical Society. No, he's the president of every Reading or organization on the East Coast.
Now, that hasn't been true for quite a long time. But,
okay.
I'm the president of Tom's Train Barn. How's that?
Great. And what size is it?
20 by 36.
Okay. And what color is the roof?
Blue.
Blue. Okay, you two guys, I want you to be on your best. I want you guys to be on your best behavior tonight, because today we're going to talk to Blaine Hatfield, who is a close personal friend of mine, and I don't want you guys to embarrass me. So,
okay.
Blaine, you won't embarrass me. I might embarrass you, but that. So Blaine worked for ExactRail. Blaine, come on in.
Careful. Blaine's here.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Careful where you sit. Don't sit on the wrong end of the couch because somebody McGurked on it. So the reason we have you here tonight is because it's very exciting news. You're starting your own model railroad company.
That is correct. Yes.
And it's called Arrowhead.
It's called Arrowhead Models.
And you work. When was the last time you worked at ExactRail? That's how everybody knows you, is ExactRail.
I left ExactRail in October of 2017, so approximately 9 months ago.
Okay, and you moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
No, but close. I moved to a small town called Sheridan in Wyoming.
Ah, I was so close. And you moved, because you bought 10 acres and you built a 20,000 square foot warehouse to keep your business in, right?
Well, not yet, but that would be nice.
So how does a guy, all right, so where would we start the questions, Bruce and Tom? Where would we start the questions? So this is very exciting. So you actually announced, this is May 28th, which we've determined, and you actually announced the beginning of your company about a week ago.
Correct, yes.
And what did that entail? Do you have a website?
I do. I have a website. It's arrowheadmodels.com, and I would invite all of your viewers to check it out. We're trying to do something a little different, at least as I see it. In addition to offering fine-scale replicas, my intention with this business is to try to give the customers a better experience in model railroading. And I've framed this business in a way that I think promotes just a better overall customer experience.
Okay, so because some of the customer experiences that you've worked with were like what would be a difference? Like, give me an indication of what you think is. First off, how do you start your own model railroad company? Like, did you just sit bolt upright in bed one night and went, I'm going to have my own company?
Yeah, I guess I did. It's a process to start a business, and my wife and I were committed to the task. We burnt the boats, so to speak. We sold our home and sank everything into the business, and we're going to try to have a real go at this.
Okay, well, that's pretty exciting. It's kind of you and I have known each other. I first interviewed you some time ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, and you and I immediately made some sort of a, I don't know, what would be the word, spiritual connection, psychic connection. You and I are just, we are interested in each other's personality, I guess. So
yes, we're in.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about this because I've known somewhat of it as we've been going along, but not much because you were, thinking that you were seeing how life went and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what's the process? Being that you were in the business and everybody, like, I remember talking to you about the amount of hand-wringing that was going on when it was announced that you had left Exactrail. There was much hand-wringing in the model railroad community. Oh my God, what's going to happen now? Blaine has left. So people are going to be thrilled to hear about this. There's going to be many, many people that are thrilled to hear about this.
Well, I hope so. It definitely has I'm all in on this, and I believe that our first products are going to target areas of the market that need some attention.
Okay, and the first products are?
So I'm not ready to make an announcement yet.
Okay.
But they're coming, and that announcement will happen soon.
Okay, I'll guess then. It's some sort of Pennsylvania boxcar for 027.
In one of those respects, you may be right.
It's a G gauge flat car from the Rio Grande Southern.
Perhaps.
Okay, so I think so let's get into this. So you've decided to start your own company. You've got a website, arrowheadmodels.com.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you say the customer experience, what is, give me a rough idea of what you mean by that, and then we'll ask questions. And Tom and Bruce, of course, ask any questions you'd like along the way.
Okay. I have a question. Are we talking about rolling stock? Are we talking about buildings or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously there's a lot of segments to this hobby. So our first offerings will be rolling stock, and I'm not making any commitments beyond that.
Okay.
All right. So here's the question. Here lately, we've talked about the growth of the hobby. Like, that I think that the hobby's growing like crazy because the internet is connecting the whole world now. I've come up, I think since the last time I talked to you, I came up with a new phrase. It's like after the nuclear holocaust. And you're convinced you're the only guy left on that. It's like model railroaders are like, you're convinced you're the only guy on the planet that's alive, and you crawl out of what's left of your basement finally after 3 years of living in the dark, and you walk outside, and not only are you still alive, but there's all kinds of people that are still alive. All the other that's what the internet's doing. It's bringing all the model railroaders together.
Right.
Bringing them out of their basement. So I personally think that the hobby's going to grow like crazy. I think it's going to explode. I think this hobby's going to explode, and we're all going to end up being covered in model railroad goo.
I hope I can be a part of that.
So you must have some confidence in the hobby then, if you're going to start a new company.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think model railroading's core strength is that it attracts people with such varied interests. People who buy trains are not all trying to do the same things with them. And I think the diverse audience that you have in model railroading and the various reasons that a person may have to get involved are, a conversation all of their own. And, they usually have something to do with trains, of course, but I'm often surprised by all the other reasons that people get involved in the hobby. And I know that you've, in some sense built a podcast around this yourself, a modeler's life, talking to people about their interests and then also what lies outside of their, immediate interests
right.
in model railroading. And it's all very interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this hobby is different from so many others. I actually, just before we started this interview, I got a phone call from a fellow, Kevin Moore, whose interview was on around May the 14th, I think. And he owns a private sleeping car. He's also a model railroader, but he was talking to us about what it entails owning a private sleeping car. And, yeah, like there's more to the hobby. And I notice that you're talking about your aim is going to be to supply people with the evidence of a job well done. So, like, does that infer that you're going to give people an insight into the research and planning and all that?
Yeah, so it's my opinion that model train manufacturers can do a better job of serving the industry. And one of the ways in which we're customarily weak, if I can say it like that, is the way we announce and market products. In typical fashion, a model train is marketed with line art, and I think there's a latent expectation that it's the consumer that will recognize what the car is and whether or not they want it or if it bears the paint scheme that they like. But there's not a whole lot of detail that goes beyond that. And my experience in developing products is, in terms of fidelity and quality, you ask a lot of your customers to know in great detail very specific things about a freight car. That's very difficult to do. And I think it behooves the manufacturers just to do a better job of how they release and talk about their products and give evidence for how that product was developed. And I'm going to try to do that with Arrowhead in a way that maybe hasn't been seen previously. So yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to your intent, your idea is that not only are you going to provide the customer with a good product, you're also going to give them some insight into how you decided to develop product X and why this particular product is interesting to have on your model railroad or to purchase and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So Blaine, I'm reading your business statement here. And you're basically, you're not taking any pre-orders, and every time you announce a product, it's going to be available immediately, which is kind of interesting.
Right, and it's because I've adopted that model that I'm reticent to talk about what the upcoming announcement is, because I'm not ready to release it, and I don't break from that model. So yeah, there's definitely some risk there, but I do have a decade of experience planning and engaged in product development, and I think I'm comfortable with those risks. I'm certainly willing to take them because I think it provides a better experience for the customer. In addition to owning a model railroad company and having worked for one for many years, I'm also a consumer myself and have found myself frustrated by the process of getting excited about a product, but not being sure that I want to commit to it because the announcement itself doesn't provide me with enough information. It's line art. I don't know how well the execution might be. I'm trusting a lot in the name of the manufacturer. So I hold off, and then it's many months, potentially a year, potentially longer before I see that product. I mean, it feels very, very slow in 2018. And, I'd like to make that be different for Arrowhead. So,
wow.
So go ahead, Bruce.
I was going to ask, my experience with microtrains and how we rely on pre-orders to see how the product's going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make a determination the product you're going to bring out? Do you have a group of people that you communicate with to come up with an idea and then develop the idea and go for it?
Yeah, well, let me pause. I'm not exactly sure what the question is. Is it a question about how we come up with the specific products that we make, or the...
Well, I'll give you an example. Joe at Microtrains, they will hash out some ideas, and they'll make the determination before they announce a pre-order. Mm-hmm. They will determine, if they have the car body mold that would fit a particular car that they want to do. And then they start researching it to the point where they say, okay, now we're going to make it a pre-order. Mm-hmm. And you're going to sort of skip the pre-order and just say, okay, we're going to make this product. So I'm curious about how you go about determining if that's the product. Are you involving other people that you trust to give you honest feedback on a particular car, or is it just, you're doing a survey, or you're asking questions, or what?
So, and just before you go ahead, Blaine, I'll just tell you that Bruce works part-time at Microtrains. He's actually originally he's a retired fireman from Connecticut.
Connecticut, yep.
And I was getting to that. Come on, settle down. Westport, Connecticut, biohazard guy and all that stuff. And so anyways, he retired to Medford, Oregon, and he works part-time at Microtrains and at Campbell Scale Models. So his question comes, so he doesn't work. He's not like he's just a guy that works at he's a lovely individual that works part-time at Microtrains.
The other day I was talking to Joe, and I'm saying, you guys got to do a car that nobody else does. And I saw the process that they had to go through just to put a car up for pre-order. So I'm just curious how you are going about getting to that point where you say, okay, we're going to produce this car.
I think that's the interesting part for Blaine, because he was so well known from Exact Rail, and his standards were like, I think that's a good question, Blaine. I mean, you're going to rely on your experience to figure out what you're going to do next, kind of thing.
Well, that's certainly true. I guess I hesitate to answer the question only for the fact that there's no real formula that I know to employ. There's a list of cars that a manufacturer wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a list of cars that, based on a manufacturer's interest for fidelity, one can do. And when you're trying to operate at the highest echelons of authenticity, the amount of information that you need to produce a freight car is lengthy. So I think the first part of your question is that needs to be determined first. Of those cars that you want to do, how many of them can you do?
Right.
And then beyond that, there is some intuition there, and that intuition isn't without a basis in talking to people and having your pulse on what's available in the industry and how this might fill a gap. But you look at all of those things. You look at one, how many of the prototype cars were available, how many paint schemes. So much of the industry operates by way of paint schemes, and I think manufacturers, by and large, and certainly don't know what Microtrains does, but I think it is a fair statement to say that many manufacturers count paint schemes because many hobbyists buy product based on the railroads they like.
Right.
And not a whole lot more than that. So if you can tally a lot of paint schemes, then you put yourself in a position, one would think, to sell more cars. Now, I say one would think because my experience at ExactRail is that there are exceptions to that rule.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the cars we did at ExactRail, and I've forgotten how many products we did there. I think we had something in the neighborhood of 80 distinct freight cars. The best sellers were the Pullman Standard 4427 covered hopper.
Mm-hmm.
We released something in the order of 100 of those cars, 100 different paint schemes of that car. But then close second and thirds were the Trinity F-Box boxcar, which is effectively a one paint scheme car. So there's no hard and fast rules, and I think that makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If, as a manufacturer, you're going to do one of those cars that have a very narrow band of paint schemes, you certainly load that project with a lot more risk.
Right.
So
I figured it out. Your first car is going to be a bulkhead flat car that was used by the Milwaukee Road between the years of 58 and 64 in Z-scale. Am I even close?
You are.
Is that the Z scale or the car?
Yeah. So people need to remember that you've got 10 years experience in one of the car manufacturing companies that was at the forefront. So you're not just going into this blind. You've worked at ExactRail, and now you have some ideas of what you want. Like you're very. I really like this. How you're going to let the customer. So there's going to be something about these either on your website or somewhere where people can go and learn about the cars that you're going to be selling.
Yes.
And the car is going to be done so the person isn't seeing a line drawing or a planned car. It's going to be the actual product already done. Probably similar to what Scale Trains does, where they don't make an announcement until they actually have something that's in their hand that says this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah. Like there will only be announcements and photography of actual models. Yes,
That's great. You're not going to have to wait a half a year or 3 years or whatever to actually have the car in your hand. It's going to be instantaneous.
Right.
Wow.
So you're taking it upon yourself now to push the hobby industry into a different direction where just announcing stuff and saying we're going to do it isn't going to be good enough anymore. It's going to be, there's these guys over here at Arrowhead. They've got the product when they announce it, which is half the fun. Is that you're going to be able to buy it when it's announced.
Yeah, I think this model, although, and it's been suggested in our conversation that there's some risk to doing business that way, I think it gives the customer a better experience, but I also think it's better for the industry on a whole, including manufacturers. And I know that there are some that would disagree with me on that point, but it's my opinion that just about the weakest possible sales position a company could take is an announcement that gives very little actual information about the car. There are no photos. There are typically no or few prototype photos. It's just artwork and a list of road names and paint schemes. But then it's also, so it's difficult to sell on those terms, but then it's also difficult to sell because the time it takes to iterate from pre-order to models in hand as long. And so then by the time that you release, enthusiasm for the announcement is, because now it's old news.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the production numbers, set as they were on a very weak sales model, sets you up to be in a place not to have the inventory to support selling that model if and when that particular product is a success. So things sell out then very, very quickly.
Yes.
And it's just, I think, a very frustrating way to do business. And so I'm trying my best to break from that and do something different.
And do you know when that kind of thing started? That pre-order, this is what it's kind of like me sitting here going, well, I'm going to interview Rod Stewart. I don't know when, but I'm going to interview Rod Stewart, and it's kind of like everybody gets all excited and then it's, never happens, or it's 3 years down the road or whatever. And by the time you get around to it, people are tired or they've lost the enthusiasm. I would think that would be a really big thing. You announce a particular car and 10 months later you've actually got it. And a lot of people would have just flat out lost their enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty comfortable with things operating that way in this industry, but imagine in some other industry, things operating that way. It's difficult to know what that would look like, but
Well, and part of the problem is there's not a lot of companies, but more than one and less than 1,000 companies that have announced products, and they announce them and announce them and announce them, and in some cases they never come out, and then in some cases it takes 3 to 4 years before you see anything.
Yep. And sometimes it's not that great.
Yeah, and then it's not that great. Yeah, exactly. Tom, you must go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, one example that I waited a long time for were the Broadway Limited SW1500s in Reading. I think they kept getting delayed, and it was years. It had to be at least 3 years between the time that they were announced and the time that they finally shipped. And then when they arrived, there were mistakes on the locomotive.
Oh.
There were things that were not right. So it was very disappointing. But the concept of, I don't know if you want to call it just-in-time manufacturing or whatever approach you're taking, but I think the ability to have your product follow hard on the heels of the announcement, could really be differentiating. I guess one of my first questions, Blaine, would be, I'm assuming you have multiple products in your pipeline at this point, or are you just focused on launching this initial product for now and then evaluating, or kind of, again, obviously I don't want you to divulge trade secrets or anything, but I'm assuming you've kind of got a multi-year plan here.
I do. Yeah. And I do have a number of projects that are currently in development.
Wow.
So will these be manufactured in China as like most model railroad products, or?
So yeah, they will be manufactured in China insofar as they'll be tooled, assembled, and painted in China. That, with only a few very, very rare exceptions, is par for the course in this industry. And but we do all of our design here in the U.S. In fact, the engineering, in addition to the research, is all done by myself. And that's another point of distinction for Arrowhead that I think makes it truly unique. Most model train companies have their engineering work done in China. Mm-hmm. And one of my criticisms of that process is that the person who is doing the design, right, that needs to know the most about product has likely never even seen the car that they're designing, right?
Okay.
As one who's done that work, I think that opens you up for inaccuracies, and the design is a highly involved process. One, there's a mountain of decisions that are being made with each design step, and it's almost impossible to manage all of those steps remotely. Just so that there can be progress, a person has to be able to make decisions and move design forward without the over-the-sea correspondence. And I think that's a weakness in the model. So one of the tenets of the Arrowhead business is that all research and design are highly integrated, and that the person that owns the research process, me, is also the person that designs the models. Think about something that's very, very familiar to you, something that you handle every day.
Right.
Like the steering wheel of your car. Now go and design that. And one, I think it's hard for most people to even, without sitting in front of their steering wheel and looking at it, to even recall what it looks like. But it points to how complex that process really is. And so where every manufacturer that I'm aware of separates those two, research and design, Arrowhead integrates the two.
Okay.
And I think that's an important reassurance of fidelity.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So, how did you come up with the name Arrowhead?
Oh, that's a great question.
Before you go on, have some of my questions been sort of borderline?
Never. Never. I wanted to create an identity that connected with the storied place that railroads have in American history. There's something intrinsic to railroads and America and the great American West that I think is really beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Really beautiful history to our hobby, and so I wanted to create an identity that appealed to that, right? And as it is, railroads, their marketing departments frequently created identities that appealed to the iconography of the vast West.
Right.
Flagship brands were named and inspired by the West and the Native American, and so I wanted to have a name or to do something that was close to that, and Arrowhead seemed like a good choice. So
yeah, it's a good name. Like where you just you must have been kind of trying to think of a name, and then one day you kind of just went, well, that's the name kind of thing. Like, I mean, I know when I started this podcast, it was all the idea of the podcast was it was being about the life of the modelers, because I was always interested in the people, and then just one day it kind of spit out of my head, a modeler's life. And was it kind of the same thing where just all of a sudden you went, yeah, that's because you're right. Arrowhead embodies, the West and that heritage and all of that, the American West and all, and Native America and all that stuff. And I mean, it's a great name for sure.
Well, thank you. One of the things that I was trying to accomplish, in addition to giving it a name that played into this really rich history, is one, I felt like I needed something that was easy to say and easy to remember.
Yeah.
Arrowhead, I think, is pretty easy to remember. You hear it and you don't forget it. And then you also need a name for which you can get a web domain that's relatively close, right? I mean, I don't want to have the name be Arrowhead Models, but have the web domain be taken so that I have to be something other
Yeah, yeah, like Blaine's Arrow Models 99 or something.
Right, right. So you're trying to balance and find, the right fit for all of those things, and Arrowhead worked. And I remember while I was working on my MBA, I had a class member who, the way our program was structured is we had sort of a team setting where we would do a lot of group work, and this individual brought some arrowheads that he found on his ranch, and showed them to me, and I don't know, they just felt like sacred objects.
Right.
The thought that the last hands that touched this, that arrowhead represented the best technology of its time.
Yeah, exactly.
That they were that old.
Yeah.
And it was just inspiring to me, and maybe that contributed to it, because it was shortly thereafter that I came up with the name for the...
Yeah, well, it's a great name. I mean, like you say, it's simple. It's going to be easy to remember. It'll make an impact, that kind of thing. So I see it says here you're committed. Like, what is it you're going to do about looking after the customer that you think might be different from other people?
Well, one, I hope to create a better experience generally by way of how we showcase our models. We detail the research steps that we took to create those models, and then how those models are available with a prompt release following announcement. Beyond that, we offer an unconditional return policy on all products. Arrowhead will sell through hobby stores, but we also sell online. And the fact of the modern world is that sales transact online with great frequency.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's a challenge, because they want to see and they want to hold the model in their hand. We can't, Arrowhead can't change the greater trends of the internet and how that's displacing traditional methods of commerce.
Right.
So we can do the best thing that we can, which is we'll offer an unconditional guarantee, a guarantee that serves our customers, not us. No questions, no problems.
Right.
If they buy the model from our website and it isn't what they wanted or what they expected, we'll return it.
Right. So basically, because I mean, there are hobby shops that are going to survive and flourish. I mean, I'm sure you experience that already, but basically what you're saying, if you live somewhere where you don't have availability to see the model in person, and you buy it and it arrives, and for some reason or other it's not quite what you thought it was going to be, you'll be happy to take it back, no questions asked.
Absolutely.
Very, very similar to this podcast. This podcast we'll put on the free channel, and once you listen to it, if you don't like it and you feel you didn't get your money's worth, you just return it, and we'll be happy to refund your money.
Right, LL Bean.
Yeah, like LL Bean, exactly. So there's like a million questions. It's very exciting to be part of it right at the beginning. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about it because we're going to go. People are so like where this information that you're going to give the hobbyist about the product, is that primarily going to be on your website then? Like people will. Okay, so we today on June 28th, 2024, we're selling box or car X. And if you want to know all about it and all about you can go to our website, and there's about how we researched it and all that. Is that primarily where they're going to see this information?
Yeah, that's the hub for all information. Naturally, we have a Facebook account. We have a YouTube channel, but all of that centers on what originates at the website.
Right. So people will basically, what you're trying to do is you're going to try to give people as much of the information that you've collected when as you manufacture this particular product.
Right.
And from some of the research research, that'll be interesting for people, because you're right. Like a lot of, like we talked about this before, rivet counters, it can be loved and hated at the same time. And on the one hand, they're like enough already with all the counting all the details on the cars. But on the other hand, they've pushed the hobby forward. So all this information that you obtain or you gather together to make a particular model, you're going to have available for the consumer, so they too can know why this particular car is this particular way.
Yeah. So really, I think it's important because pretty much any model train manufacturer lays claim to offering the highest fidelity. I mean, from marketing brand tags like simply the best to, closest to the real thing, to simply the best freight cars, to, right? I mean, everybody's trying to lay claim to being the best, and some do a very good job, and some have some ground to cover, in my opinion. And it's very difficult for the customer, unless you have, one, either a great deal of knowledge about that particular product, or two, enough experience in the industry to be comfortable with brands and the level of fidelity that they offer. You can't differentiate. And my hope with Arrowhead is to talk less and show why, and then everything else follows. But the hobby industry, model railroading is not an easy hobby to get into. It takes a lot, and I think manufacturers encumber that process when their brands and their particular product lines aren't very conspicuous in terms of what they're trying to offer. So that's what I'm doing.
No, that's a good point. It is a hard hobby to get into, and it's like, you have a lot of, you're a model railroader. You've had a lot of experience in the industry. Explain to me what the fascination of this hobby is. Like, what is it that, like, I don't, the hobby's been dying for, like, I've been in the hobby, I guess now almost 59, 58 years. And I mean, the hobby's been dying for pretty much all that time. And yet, like I say, the internet is the latest renaissance of the hobby. Like, as I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt, this hobby is absolutely going to explode over the next 10 years. And like I say, we're all going to be covered in model railroad goo. And it's because everybody has like, look at you and I. I mean, you and I have, we've talked we can talk and we can do this podcast, Tom and Bruce, we've met each other through this podcast. I mean, the availability to interact with people. Like, what is it about this hobby? What is it that makes it, like you say, it's hard to get into, and yet people are drawn to it, like, what is it about model railroading? Do you know?
I don't know. I have no idea. And I imagine whatever reason I could possibly give, it would be one reason among 1,000.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Except to say that I don't know of another hobby that allows you to recreate an era than model railroading. When we create models, we're not just creating, a freight car, right? And the more you know about railroads and economies, and the story just becomes so rich. I had a good friend here who was a PhD history professor at a university. And the way he approached modeling was so different from mine. And our conversations were so interesting because of the way his insight into modern history bore into his hobby,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Completely different from my own perspective, and I think you're onto something really special when somebody can approach a particular a particular interest from so many different angles.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Bruce, you said it perfectly once. It's simulation. It's the opportunity to simulate something in 3 dimensions.
Yeah. It's not just like, I think I said it was in relationship to like the guys that do the boat models or the RC flying models. It's you've got a whole world that you create, not just the plane taking off and that's it. It's the operations, the scenery, the whole facet of different skills and things going on that it makes it a world within a world.
Yeah, and you said it's the one hobby where you can come as close as possible to recreating the actual operation of that particular, like, RC flying guys, they're kind of like all over the sky, and RC boat guys just kind of go around in circles, and they're cool. I mean, they're very cool. I got a friend that does RC boat racing, and it's really cool. But you're right. It's the closest thing you can do to actually simulating the real world. Okay, Blaine, let's get down to the nuts and bolts, buddy.
Okay.
So when do we think our first product is going to be available?
June.
Wow.
End of June, 1st of July is what I'm hoping.
Okay, so it's probably on a container as we speak, chugging along, headed to North America.
Pretty close.
Wow.
Okay.
So how does a guy? So have you been to China? Have you had to go to China as part of this, or?
I have, yes.
Wow, this is very exciting. I feel like there's like a bazillion questions I want to ask. So go ahead.
The thing that upsets me about pre-orders is that when something comes out, I either don't have the money to buy it, or I'm not ready for it. And once it comes out, it's in limited edition, and it comes out, and then it's typically some of them are gone, and then you either have to pay a higher premium to get one on the internet, or sometimes you're lucky enough to get it less because it didn't go as well as the manufacturer planned. Mm-hmm. Are you planning to do limited runs, or are you planning on repeating runs when there seems to be a need for it?
Well, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I think that's the saying. So my intention is that once a road number has been released, mm-hmm. unless there are extenuating circumstances, the road number will not be re-released.
Okay, good. All right. I can understand that.
Yeah, that said, if demand for a particular product is such that additional runs are feasible, they will be done in new road numbers.
Okay.
This is all very exciting. I feel like we're like right on the verge. Tom, what are you thinking? You're a prototype modeler. You're heavily into the Reading Railroad. They're modeling the cross line. That's about as far as I can go. I forget exactly from Harrisburg to somewhere.
Allentown.
There you go. That's not bad. I did pretty good on there. So you must have some thoughts about this.
It's really interesting because there are a couple things that I need to model or to have on the layout to really be accurate. And I've had conversations with several manufacturers, and I've tried to make the case that this stuff it's not just because I'm a Reading modeler and the Reading had these. One of them is a particular type of locomotive. The other is a particular type of freight car.
Can I guess on the freight car?
Sure.
The HTZ.
Bingo.
I got it.
Which, by the way, will be available from Arrowhead Models this coming July.
If that's the case, then put me down for one of each number. No,
Are you serious though? Did I really guess right?
You did. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. And I was at the Malvern RPM meet. I had a conversation with Scale Trains. I had a conversation with Bowser. I had a conversation with Finaro and Camerlengo about doing them in resin. Although the thought of putting together a bunch of ATZs in resin scares the bejeebus out of me. But these 90-ton hopper cars, it was originally an N&W design. So the N&W had them, the Redding had them, the Sioux Line had them, and I think there might have been somebody else. And a bunch of them lasted, up into Conrail. So, clearly there's a variety of of stuff that could be produced. And the responses I've gotten are, the pipeline's full, but we'll take a look at it, and I understand that. I understand, people have their business plans and everything, but there have been some other things that I've presented to manufacturers and just kind of gotten blown off about. And I don't really have a lot of visibility into the economics of it, like what the upfront cost and investment is in order to bring something to production, in terms of having tooling made and things like that. So other than just inherently understanding that it's going to take somebody a lot of money to bring a product to market, I don't have enough of a sense of what the break even point is. I've sold the decals and stuff that I've done, but it's a much simpler thing. You do the minimum run, you figure out what the cost is, and you set your pricing to break even or make a little bit off of that. But yeah, hey, if you can do HTZs, man, I told you, I'll take one of every number, and I know a bunch of other guys that'll probably do the same. So,
what's an HTZ, Tom? You better. It's a lot. Not everybody will know.
An HTZ is an open 90-ton open hopper that the Redding used in ore service to supply Bethlehem Steel.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So, what was the length of it?
48 feet.
40. There you go. I have the.
So Blaine, you're going to do the engineering. You're going to do most of the work, and then the guys in China manufacture it. And so how do you find somebody to okay, all right. So did you just basically you had so many years in the industry? Like I said, when you left the industry, there was so much hand wringing. I'm thinking, did I miss something here? Because I'm thinking, holy mackerel, people are just like, oh my God, Blaine has left Exactrail. The world's going to come to an end. Freight cars aren't going to be made anymore. So then you must have kind of gone the direction you knew where to go in China. Like, did you just get off the boat and did you take a boat to China or did you actually fly?
Yeah, took a boat.
A slow boat.
Yeah. So you got off the boat and started wandering around, or you knew the guys to talk to, I guess, and
yeah, all of that comes with industry, just experience being in the industry, knowing where to go.
Okay. So by now it's May 28th. Thanks for Tom's explaining that to me. And the website they can go to is arrowheadmodels.com. And they're not going to see what the first product is yet because you're not going to put that out there until people can actually buy it.
Correct.
Can I ask you what the price point would be? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Arrowhead Models will be focusing on highly faithful replicas of freight cars, and as a result, they'll be in the same price point as you would see, other freight cars of that kind.
Okay, so in the 40, like I know tangent scale models they're just under $50. I don't know what Moloko is. So I know people speak very highly of them.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, do you hope to do locomotives and stuff, or you're just not that, you're not thinking that far ahead yet. You're just concentrating on freight cars. I'm always amazed that these freight car manufacturers are so. I'm telling you, Blaine, this hobby is going to explode right in front of our faces. I don't see how it can't with people being able to connect. Like you were talking about the price point or the cost. Tom, you're talking about costs and making a profit. Like I know I have to produce at least 1,000 of each podcast to turn a profit. With the tooling and the Diet Pepsis that I drink and all that stuff. So what else? So what else can you tell us? Okay, so the price point's going to be in the same ballpark as other high-end freight car manufacturers.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of information for the customer. You have a lot of experience in the industry. You're not going to announce anything until you actually have product in hand. What are the main shows you feel like you've got to hit during the year? What's the best way you think that you're going to advertise your product? That's an interesting question.
Yeah. So, our plan for advertising is a lot of just guerrilla marketing, social media marketing. Fortunately for us, I think that the consumer base that's interested in high-end replicas is accessible through the right channels.
Right.
Naturally, as the company grows, we're going to try to expand on our marketing efforts. We'll also attend pretty aggressively prototype modeling meets and historical society conventions. I'm the organizer for the Mountain States RPM meet here in the Mountain West area.
Right.
That's definitely a place, RPM types of meets where you'll find Arrowhead in the future.
Right. So like Chicago, the RPM meet, the one between Valley Forge and Pittsburgh, St. Louis one.
Yeah. Yeah. We have plans to attend most of those meets.
Okay. And
maybe not all in our first year,
no.
But our growth strategy is to move that direction.
Exactly. And you'll obviously be going to the Springfield show, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. That's another important show, the Milwaukee Train Fest show.
The Train Fest. Will we see you at the NMRA Train Show in Kansas City?
You won't see me there this year.
Okay. Well, will you be going to the NMRA Train Show next year in Kansas City? Because I won't be there this year.
I will be going to the one in Salt Lake City.
Okay. Yeah, all right. And so do you feel like if the company grows at a steady pace, do you feel like you'll be able to find a spot for me somewhere in management?
Sure. And management.
Yeah. I don't want to start at the bottom. I want to kind of start. I don't mind middle management, but I don't want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could be VP in charge of guys that talk a lot and not much happens. All right, so there must be a container on a boat somewhere, or the container is landed and it's about to. So you're going to do all your distribution and everything from Sheridan, Wyoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's home base for the business.
Okay.
Small town, a town of ranchers and cattlemen at the base of the Bighorn Mountains. I'm a small town person.
Right.
Love it. We just love it.
So how far are you from Medford, Oregon?
2 days by car. 1,500 miles-ish.
Yeah. So you could work there like once a week, Tom? Do a day a week there, because Tom, he's trying to work for every model railroad manufacturer in North America at some point.
I think you mean Bruce.
Bruce, yeah. Well, you could work there. You could work there too, couldn't you, Tom?
Hey, I'd love to, but I'm still stuck in this insurance gig for a while.
All right. I guess what else can we? I think we've pretty much covered it.
A lot of information.
Yeah, arrowheadmodels.com. First offering will be end of June, beginning of July. That's exciting. I'm pretty convinced. I'm almost positive that it's an LGB 34-foot ore hopper. I have no idea.
Just the fact that you knew what an HTZ was
and how long it was
gives me hope.
It gives you hope.
Well,
cool.
Tom, let me tell you, Blaine is one of the guys in the industry that he knows stuff. This guy knows stuff. This is going to be pretty exciting. 5 years from now, when we're talking to him, we'll be talking to him on a regular basis. But 5 years from now, we got to remember this night and this time when we talk to him, because it'll be pretty exciting. Now, and Tom, I guess you'll be listening to this on May the 29th as you're wheeling your way towards Philadelphia.
No, if it's on the 28th, I'll listen to it on the 28th. I'll just do it when I'm standing in front of the grill making my hot dogs.
Would you be as excited about listening to it if Bruce wasn't on it?
No, not at all.
What else did you want us to do? Was there anything else you wanted us to cover, Blaine?
I'm just really excited to be back in the game.
Yeah,
Feels good.
I know. I think that's important. I think that's an important point to. I can hear myself all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point to not excuse, because when I interviewed you before, you were really excited about being in the model railroad industry, aren't you?
I love it.
And what is it about it you love? Is it the people, the building of the product? Is it that you're in model railroading and it's one of your passions? What is it about it you love?
Well, interesting story. I was employed by ExactRail in 2009.
Okay, just before you go on with the rest of the story, we'll determine whether it's interesting. But go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And as you may recall, that year was not a good year for the economy.
No.
Quite a downturn. I had just graduated from school and was looking for the job right at the onset of that downturn, and found it very, very difficult. And wandered into a hobby shop there in Utah where I lived, and saw these boxes on the shelves with ExactRail on it, and was pretty excited to turn it over. And in reading the Contact Us block on the back of the box, saw that they were from my hometown.
Right.
And I was in a place where I really needed a job, and I don't know that I would have applied to the company under other circumstances, because my fear at the time was I would become a person that only had trains to talk about, right?
Right. Yeah.
I wasn't sure that I wanted my future to be that. I wasn't sure that I wanted to work on them during the day and play with them at night and become one-dimensional in that way. But the circumstances, were austere, and so I worked those angles and got a job, and I have never worked a day since, and I've loved every minute of it. So to be back in the game with Arrowhead, where I can have an impact and make decisions about the business and the way we operate in the way that I think are more congenial to my preferences, is a huge opportunity for me. And
yeah, you're going to have your own company. Yeah, your own company, your own decisions. You're the guy that gets to decide and all that stuff. It's going to be very cool. This is going to be wildly successful, don't you think, guys?
Definitely. I hope so.
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I just know, Blaine, from my interaction with you, that it's not going to be anything other than successful. You strike me as a guy that intensity is failure is not really an option.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's done in a quiet way, which is even more effective. All right, now we got to give out our email address. First, we'll tell everybody we have a website too, Blaine. We have a modelerslife.com.
Yes.
And we announce our products there too. Our latest products go out there too, and each one is an individual road number. What will be the title of this show? Arrowhead Models. The beginning of Arrowhead Models.
I love it.
Yeah,
Arrowhead Models, get to the point.
Yeah, exactly. Arrowhead Models. It's here now. It's here now.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Because this whole pre-order thing has become almost the way of the industry. Like now, you're going to be one of those guys. Like I say this to Shane Wilson. He kind of turned the locomotive manufacturing industry on its head by offering the product he does. And now you're going to do something where you're like, we have the product. We're announcing it, and we have it. People will start taking notice of that.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm not the first to do it, but that in conjunction with, I think, the other things that we're implementing definitely distinguishes us.
Yeah. All right, Bruce, give out our email address there, will you?
Okay, if you want to reach us through the wonders of email, you can reach us at modelerslife@gmail.com. That's modeler with one L like Arrowhead Models, not two L's like Kelly.
There you go. Oh, nice. Sweet. You've been working on that the whole hour, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
What'd you think, Tom?
I'm excited.
Yeah, very
Especially
cool.
if the hopper comes out.
Yeah, the HTZ. Yep. That's what it is. You've guessed it. Oh my God, you ruined the whole thing. Is it a full container or a 20-footer?
It's chock full of HTZs.
How many?
When is it landing?
Container directly to Tom's house. Like it's not even going to come to Wyoming.
Yeah,
it's going straight to Tom's house.
When is it landing, and what port is it coming in? I will meet it on the dock.
I got a real quick question. Are you going to do one road number, or are you going to do multiple road numbers?
We'll do multiple road numbers.
Oh boy, it's definitely going to Tom's house.
Can you tell us how many you made? Can you tell us how many of the? I did that to Shane. Like I don't want anybody to answer any questions they don't want to, and I did that to Shane Wilson. I interviewed him at Chicago at the Chicago RPM meeting. I'm just sitting there and I'm asking. I'm just this dopey guy asking questions. So we're talking about the Gevos, which were the hit of the moment. And I'm saying, so like, how many of these did you make? And he kind of looks at me, and I'm like, and he finally tells me they made 6,000 of them. And I'm like, later I said, so why is that an unusual question? And he says, well, model railroaders think that each one costs, 34 cents to make, and you're making billions of dollars of profit. So.
Well, I'm not making billions of dollars of profit, but we don't disclose our production quantities either. So
yeah, that's good. I don't think hardly anybody does, but that's cool. And you know what? I'll take this opportunity to apologize to Todd Arnett. Here's a story for you. Here's a little story for everybody. So Todd Arnett works with Shane Wilson at ScaleTrains.com, but he just works in a consulting capacity. He just kind of offers his services. They got to know each other, and so Todd asked me to come to the Norfolk and Western Historical Society convention, and which was from May 17th to the 19th, I believe, or the 20th. And I said sure. After a while, I said sure. And I thought, cool, I'll go do some interviews and everything. So that was, today's May 28th, so that was a week ago. Well, when I showed up for the convention? 2 weeks ago. I was a whole week early. I had planned everything out, and I had a nice drive. I left Florida at about 12:30, right just after noon. I thought, perfect, I'll get there around 9. And I wheel into the Marriott there in Salisbury, North Carolina, and I walk up to the desk, and I'm thinking, boy, this lobby seems awfully quiet for a model railroad or for a railroad convention. And I said to the fellow, he said, do you have a reservation? I said, I certainly do. The name is Strang. And he says, I don't see it here.
That's a terrible feeling.
And I said, this is Salisbury, North Carolina, right? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, is Norfolk and Western Convention here? It's Norfolk and Western, right? Yeah. And he said, yeah, next weekend. I said, well, then do you have a reservation for Strang on the 17th of May? He says, as a matter of fact, I do. 1 week to the day early.
So what did you do?
I got back in my car and just kept driving.
How long of a drive is that for you?
Well, normally from Florida to my home in just north of Toronto is normally just under 20 hours. But when you take a 50-mile detour to the east of Charlotte, it becomes a bit longer. I was some annoyed. You get a lot of time to think on the way home in the middle of the night when you're thinking to yourself, what am I doing? How did I end up? I spent the whole time thinking, now I got to tell Todd that I showed up a week early. What a screw up. I am just like a total screw up. Oh, well, that's it. All right. So I guess we're done. Okay, Blaine, we're going to talk to you again. Probably, well, for sure we'll talk to you in Springfield, but I think we should talk to you before then. We should talk to you again. You know what? Let's talk to you again, say, towards the end of the summer to see how things went and what happened and all that stuff.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it too. All right. Say goodnight, Tom.
Good night, Tom.
Say goodnight, Bruce.
Good night, Bruce.
Blaine.
Yes. Good night.
And good night and happy railroading.
Isn't there a thing about a barn and a?
No, not for this. That's only for the actual episodes. This is just a ripoff of the actual episodes.
Oh.
This is just a cheap knockoff.
Oh, I'm not on the real A Modeler's Life?
You are on the Real Modeler's Life, but each month there's 2 episodes on the first Monday and the third Monday of each month. And then in between, there's another free podcast of varying subjects. Like, for example, we're talking to you on the actually a week and a half before yours is about to air, and the next one that's going to air is about the Berlin sleeping car owned by Kevin Moore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then there'll be an episode. There's going to be episode number 98 with Tony Cook, Model Railroad News Editor Tony Cook. And then the week following that, it's the big Arrowhead Models announcement episode.
Oh, yeah, and I can't wait for that.
Or the Arrowhead Models show. It's the big Arrowhead Models show. It's not an episode. It's all confusing. Like, the problem is I should never have been given a podcast or started one because I really have no idea what I'm doing. I'm basically driving down. You know what it is? It's like podcasts are British, and I'm driving down the wrong side of the road. I'm driving down the wrong side of the road of podcasting. I'm in the oncoming lane of podcasting. Say goodnight, Blaine.
Good night. Thank you.
Say goodnight, Blaine.
Good night, Blaine.
Attaboy.
It's another Lincoln Homer.